Just working this morning on transplanting some small transplants into the high tunnel in our neighbor's yard, and realized it has been a little while, a whole lot of progress and a little while since we made an update about the pond system here and some of the gardens that are going on and how this high tunnel is working. So this will be an update video. Hope it's compelling. We've been really busy over here. It's a little hard to know where to begin, but I'll mention some highlights of what I'd like to talk about in this video. We got all of the rice planted through this channel. I'll talk about a little siphon setup, super passive, really straightforward. So there's rice all through here. We're trialing different contexts of depth, some much deeper, some a little bit more shallow, drier soil. There's also some skirret in there. We'll take a look at those. I've been doing some transplanting, got some chard and kales in some of these better drained beds, and have refined a bit more how the water is being held in this pond. Added lots more vegetation to the edge, which I'll come back to. You can see the far end, which I talked about before, how I fortified that. The water's gone down a bit since it has not rained for a while, and we're pulling a lot of water at the moment to get the high tunnel going. But this embankment of clay and stomped stone was able to hold water really nicely in the last rain. So that's very exciting. We've got a good amount of water holding, and it seems pretty reliable. I guess since we're here, we'll zoom in. The frogs have been insanely active. About 2 weeks ago, there's a huge amount of mating going on. And now here we are. And basically everywhere that's within a foot or two depth in this pond has this scene going on. There's probably a few hundred thousand tadpoles. Lots of different little microclimates, little shelves, warm spots, deeper spots. So hopefully, free choice, they'll be able to figure out where they'd like to be so they can maturate into frogs. A really sweet person reached out to me recently through the YouTube channel and sent along some American and Chinese water lotus starts. Thank you, Daniel. And they are not coming up yet. We'll do a better update video later on. But everywhere that there's a metal aluminum tag stapled onto a black locust stave, and there's a few all around the edge. There's about 5 varieties that should be coming up, so we'll have some water lotus popping on the edges here. You can see along the embankment, the willows have rooted majestically. They're growing really nicely. Skirret's been planted along the edge here, and those are all growing quite nice. Those were actually underwater about a week ago, and they seem to be loving it. The Camas we planted in here, which I understood to be very water tolerant, they're starting to flower. So there's iris and Camas. We added a bunch of Calamus in here. So the vegetation in this pond is evolving, and it feels really, really sweet. Can't happen fast enough in my mind. That fellow Daniel also sent along some duck potato, wapato. It's that arrowroot. I should know the Latin name. I have it written down, Sagittaria latifolia. And those have come up beautifully. There are about 10 of them. So they're gonna be a nice perennial aquatic vegetable, but more importantly for now, a nice covered, shaded habitat for frogs and tadpoles. Let's take a look in this high tunnel. This morning, did some more transplanting. We got a bunch of beautiful overflow transplants from our friends at Fun Acres Herb Farm. If I can find a link for them, I'll put it in the description. But look at this Tulsi, so beautiful. Unlimited Tulsi. There's Ashwaganda that we've just planted in, and a whole bunch of sweet Marjoram. So some medicinals, some culinary herbs, some that intersect both of those. And the layout in here is starting to really come together. The walkway, the minor walkway on the north side and the south side have been cut with a shovel while water was flowing in, such that if water flows at a really high rate into either of these trenches, it'll equalize across this whole space. So it's basically a swale. So we can flood, irrigate these very, very raised beds once in a while, once they're planted out and deeply mulched. Rather than surface irrigate frequently, we'll plume huge amounts of water after a rainstorm, let the beds soak it in, let the vegetation cover. And that was all done just by having water flow in and using a shovel to chase it. We've got some planting blocks here. This is a row of heirloom tomatoes that Sasha started. So they will be trellised up to this point. So they'll lean a little bit forward, and that'll give us an opportunity to grow some shade-loving but heat-loving crops along this end, probably more ashwaganda. And then around each tomato, we now have sweet marjoram on the boundaries. So each time we bump into that, we can get an orange peel oregano vibe. There's some Tulsi, some medicinal basils, holy basil, planted around. And that pattern repeats over and over again. And then some of these beds have hot peppers in front of the tomatoes to the south of them. It's kind of neat to see the very first plant that went in here this winter was this lettuce. And that bodes pretty nicely. Couple lettuces. These were just random seedlings we found outside. And so we're seeing that with the compost here and the deep watering, even with extreme heat in here, they're making these incredibly beautiful plants. I think because the soil is so deep and has so much hay buried layer by layer, once they're down in there and it's a good stable temperature and moisture, they just take off. And you can see on this berm, it's tomatoes every 2 to 3 feet. And then they've got pockets of Tulsi, so there's a basil ring around every tomato. And as these are trained up, we can pick off the lower leaves and the lower branch set, so there's enough light to support the basils. We might get some Thai basil and Genovese basil in there as well. And we've got some marigolds to transplant in to help support the tomatoes with aromatic support. And ashwaganda planted every 2 feet along the southern edge with room for Malokia just to the north. Maybe I'll type out some of these names in the description and you can search for them online if they're unfamiliar to you. But ashwaganda is a solanaceous, a tomato family plant where it has a root system that can be harvested in the fall and dried, and it is incredibly medicinal, adaptogenic. It's basically our health care for the future. But so yeah, the high tunnel's coming together. The deep irrigation potential of soaking these channels is set in motion, and I'm excited to show notes, but I'm not doing that right now because I don't want to rob from the pond until we get another good rain. We're getting dry and warm. We're coming into summer. This little corner in here has some turmeric, which we're hoping to sprout in time to grow a bunch of sweet potatoes from our lovely friend Eric at Black Creek Farm down in Hudson Valley, New York. That'll hopefully sprout so we can get some slips to transplant out. And then overwintered carrots from our friend Eric too, that in the high tunnel we hope to get some pure seed so we can have some carrot seed for the fall. We've been working with our very, very simple, there's some tech, but nothing too crazy, way of lifting water from the pond into this structure. Undersized panel for sure, but it works enough. This is a 25 watt, 12 volt solar panel, and that is a 500 gallon per hour DC bilge pump. That's about you can find these for free for people getting rid of them, but $20 or $30, maybe $40, that's about $25. And we'll do a video going in much deeper detail, but I met a new friend who's amazing with electric stuff, and he taught me how to make Anderson power poles. It's a really great water agnostic fitting system. And so we basically can drop this in the pond, plug it into the solar panel when the sun is out, and that is how we can irrigate. And we've got enough water in here to pull quite a bit before we lower the water level, but we still want to be careful there. If there's interest in it, we can do a deep dive into some of this. My friend James down in Owego, New York is making these batteries from scratch. This is e-waste from the military industrial complex, these battery cores. And so he's making these 12 volt systems that are incredibly sturdy, completely waterproof, shockproof. In fact, he converted our BCS to be electric. That will be a sneak peek here as an upcoming preview for a video where we go in depth and introduce you all to him. So he's been helping us get a little more tech into the system, but this is a battery. He said we should be able to use this every day, full discharge and recharge every day for about the next 20 years before it needs to be replaced. So that feels pretty rad to be able to lift water with defense contractor e-waste. Anyway, that's a very, very different subject for a different time. Coming full circle to the rice, this is pretty exciting to see that it's been holding water pretty nicely. I expect if we keep being dry and sunny, this water level will go away, but the soil itself will stay very, very moist for a while, and we can always mulch it if need be. But you can see, teased apart individual rices. This took many an hour, but this is about 2.5 or 3 foot wide, 2 foot wide bed, and it goes down about 80 feet. There's, I would think, at least 1,000 rice plugs. Each one should make about 100 to more rice at the end of the season. So we'll see. Definitely share notes on how that all evolves. It's sweet to see that some of the frogs have come into this space, and the little tadpoles are in here as well. And so they're stirring up and creating nutrient. It's a nice, super warm microclimate in this shallow. And so my hope is that the rice evolves and grows quickly enough that it can cast shade and support all these other life beings that are in here. Real fun technique to draw water from the pond to irrigate this little length of hose. If I put if I slip the hose fully in the pond, so it's submerged and all the air bubbles come out, I can simply put my thumb over that one and draw it back over and let it go, and it automatically siphons. I don't have anybody else here filming right now, so I'll just start the siphon and you can see it. Pretty darn low tech. Just an old piece of hose filled with water with a thumb over one end. Drag it up and over till it's a little lower than the pond line, and take my thumb off, and now we've got water that can slowly flow into this whole rice production, Skirret and Calamus production channel. And so I am going to dig this out much deeper, so there's a nice cool area for the tadpoles to sit if other areas dry out. And eventually, when the rice is growing, my thought is we can add compost and seaweed and nutrient to this area, flood irrigate from the pond, and have the nutrient leach and wash down through this common channel that we can back up with mud periodically to flood into the rice. We'll see how it all goes. We'll see whether or not this is even worth it, but it feels worth it conceptually. Anyway, if you've got notes, if you've grown rice in a northern climate and you've got some notes to share, or you're seeing things that are way off, don't hesitate to let me know. But I'll break this siphon for now, in other words, turn it off, by hitting the off switch. There you go. Love these low-tech solutions. Well, this video is long enough, meandering enough. Let us know, are there certain aspects to what you're seeing in our neighbor's food to forest conversion project that you really would love to see an update on? Are there questions that you have about what we're trying to do and how we're going about it? Do you have some specific concerns or feedback that you think we ought to know about so we can improve things? I would love to hear about it. And for now, we'll call that good as far as a short update. And yeah, it'd be lovely to get some good dialogue with you folks. And fingers crossed, a few of you have watched this whole series of converting our neighbor's lawn over to this system. And maybe it's inspired you to chat with your neighbors, and maybe it's a very, very firm no right out of the gate, and so, oh well. But maybe it's worth watching some of these videos with neighbors or folks that have land right near you to show them what's possible. This is, within 1 year, it went from a mowed lawn to everything you've seen. It feels pretty magical, and there's a whole lot of resilience for everyone involved. And we have no formal contract or formal agreement. It's all just verbal agreement and just checking in with each other, having lots of good dialogue. So I suspect a lot of you can manifest this where you live too, and I hope that's true. Let us know if that is true. Thank you for watching. We'll talk soon. Bye.